business class cabin was the kind of quiet that money buys. Cream leather seats, warm overhead lighting, the low-frequency hum of an aircraft at cruising altitude 38,000 feet above a continent that had no idea what was about to happen in row 3. Priya Nair was in seat 3A. She was 34 years old, with long dark waves falling past her shoulders and the particular composure of someone who has learned to take up exactly as much space as she needs and no more. She was wearing a charcoal pinstripe suit, well cut, clean lines, and a thin gold chain at her collarbone. She had her laptop open. She was working. She had been working since before takeoff. The man in 3C was named Richard. He had introduced himself to the flight attendant when he boarded, which most people in business class do not do. He had asked about the champagne selection with the energy of a man who wanted the flight attendant to know that he was the kind of man who had opinions about champagne. He had settled into his seat with the particular expansiveness of someone who considers any shared space to be primarily his. For the first 90 minutes of the flight, he had ignored Priya completely, which was fine by her. Then the flight attendant came by to offer a second drink, and Richard said something that was technically addressed to the flight attendant, but was clearly meant to be heard by the woman in 3A. He said with a small laugh, "Did they change the business class criteria? Seems like they'll let anyone up here these days." The flight attendant, a blonde woman in a dark green uniform with a cream silk scarf, professional to her core, went very still for a half second. Then she said, "Can I get you anything else, sir?" and moved on. Priya did not look up from her laptop. She finished the paragraph she was writing. She saved the document. She closed the laptop with the quiet, deliberate click of someone who has decided that what they were doing is now secondary to what they are about to do. She turned and looked at Richard for the first time. He was already looking at her, with the smug comfort of a man who expected either silence or distress and was prepared to enjoy either one. She said, "I'm sorry, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said they'll let anyone up here these days." He smiled, "Just an observation." "Interesting observation," she said, "from a passenger in my cabin." He laughed again, shorter this time. "Your cabin." She reached into the inside pocket of her pinstripe jacket. She placed a card on the armrest between them. Not handed, placed, the way you put something down when you want someone to look at it properly. He looked at it. It was a corporate identity card. The airline's logo was in the top left corner. Below it, in clean sans serif type, were the words, "Priya Nair, Executive Chairwoman, Viga Airways Group." Beneath that, in smaller text, "Founding Shareholder." The cabin was quiet enough that the hum of the engines was suddenly very present. Richard looked at the card. He looked at Priya. He looked at the card again. Something moved across his face, not remorse, not immediately, but the particular reckoning of a man who has just understood that the thing he said out loud 3 minutes ago was said in front of the person least likely in any room on the planet to let it pass quietly. Priya picked the card back up. She did not say anything further to him. She turned back to the aisle and raised her hand to catch the attention of the flight attendant. The flight attendant came forward immediately. Priya said, calmly and clearly, "I'd like to log a formal passenger conduct note for this flight. Can you bring me the crew incident form?" The flight attendant said, "Of course, Ms. Nair," not a flicker of surprise in her voice. She had known who was in 3A since before boarding. She had simply been waiting. The form arrived in 90 seconds. Priya completed it in the methodical way she completed everything, specific, precise, without embellishment. What was said, when it was said, the seat number it was said from. She signed it at the bottom, folded it, and handed it back. Richard said nothing during any of this. He had become very interested in the view from his window, which was clouds, which had not changed in the past 2 hours and were not going to become more interesting no matter how long he looked at them. The form was logged in the crew system before the meal service began. What happened with that form after landing was not a confrontation. It was a process. The incident note went to the airline's passenger experience division. Because it was filed by the executive chairwoman personally, it was automatically escalated to the head of passenger relations, who reviewed it the same day. The review flagged Richard's booking profile. It found that he was a frequent flyer on the airline Gold tier, approximately 30 flights per year, a business account linked to a mid-size consulting firm. The firm was contacted the following week, not by a customer service agent, by the airline's corporate accounts manager. The call was factual and direct. It described the incident and noted that the conduct had been directed at the airline's founding shareholder. The corporate accounts manager made clear that the airline was reviewing whether to continue the business travel agreement with the firm. The firm's office manager, who took the call, spent approximately 4 minutes in silence after it ended before calling the firm's managing partner. The managing partner called Richard. That conversation was not recorded, and its contents were not shared publicly. What was shared, through the firm's formal response to the airline, submitted in writing within 48 hours, was a statement of apology, a confirmation that Richard had been placed on an indefinite suspension from the firm's corporate travel accounts, and a request to continue the business agreement under revised conduct terms. The airline accepted the response. The agreement continued. The revised conduct terms were appended to the contract and signed by both parties. Richard's Gold tier status was suspended pending the outcome of an internal airline conduct review. The review took 11 days. At the end of it, his account was downgraded and a conduct notation was added that would remain attached to his profile for 3 years. In practical terms, this meant no upgrades, no priority boarding, no lounge access. Every flight for the next 3 years would be a reminder, in small and accumulating ways, of what he had said out loud in row 3. None of this was announced. None of it made the news. Priya had not called a journalist. She had not posted anything. She had not given an interview. She had filed a form. The form had done the rest. 3 weeks after the flight, at the quarterly board meeting of Viga Airways Group, the agenda included a routine review of passenger conduct policy. One amendment was proposed, a clause clarifying that conduct incidents logged by any member of the board or executive team would be automatically escalated for review rather than processed through standard channels. The clause passed without objection. It was a small amendment, 3 sentences in a policy document. But it meant that the next time someone looked around a cabin they had paid to sit in and decided to say out loud what they thought about who belonged there, the process that followed would be faster, more direct, and considerably less forgiving. Priya had not built an airline by waiting for other people to correct things. She had learned, a long time ago, that the most effective response to someone who questions whether you belong in the room is not to argue with them. It is to reveal, quietly and without drama, that you built the room, and then to make sure the room is different afterward. She opened her laptop. She found the paragraph she had been writing when she was interrupted. She read it once to pick up her thread. Then she kept working.